Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I am doing my most thought-provoking books of 2018. We're going to start with the one that I'm currently reading and will not finish by the end of the year, but I've been reading it since November and I will finish it in the next week or so hopefully, so I'm just going to include it now. And that is The Overstory by Richard Powers. I found this from Sophie over at Portal and Pages, so I'll leave her channel link down below because she reads some amazing books. This book is about trees and their impact on humans. However, it is told through a fictional way, which I find fascinating, and it makes you think about trees and life and pollution and how apparently we're all going to die in 12 years because we're killing the environment anyway, in a very different way. And sometimes it's hopeful, sometimes it's not, but it's amazing either way, and it definitely makes you think. Next, I have Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Eddo-Lodge. I read this because it was the pick for January-February for Emma Watson's book club on Goodreads. It's a very short book, it is nonfiction, and it talks about racism in Britain. I think it was a good thing for me to read it because as an American, or as any nationality, you think that your country is the worst. At this point, to be fair, I think the States has a good head start on everybody else at killing ourselves, but it was interesting to read this and realize that many of the same problems that we think are unique to our own countries are actually not, and to see how they have been addressed similarly or differently in another country and realize that maybe we should look at other countries and use their mistakes to either fix our own or to avoid making the same mistakes. It was a little bit of a disheartening read just to realize that humans don't change ever, but it was fascinating in that humans don't change, ever. Next is Refuge by Dina Nayeri. This follows well, let's find out, an Iranian girl who ends up in America, and it shows her story with her father in particular through the 4 meeting times she's seen her father since leaving Iran. It's a very interestingly written book. Most books do not focus on 4 specific meeting times in one's life, which I thought was a new and well done way to do it. However, I will caveat that by saying not everybody can write that way, and I think Dina Nayeri did it very well. I couldn't necessarily connect with the character because I've never immigrated anywhere. That said, however, I think it was very thought-provoking in that it did make me think about the experiences of other people, and as a white woman, that's important. So I enjoyed this for the way it made me think and the way it made me look at the world differently. Next I have Life in Motion by Misty Copeland. This is actually the young reader edition because my adult edition is in Colorado because I read it last Christmas and didn't want to take it back on the plane with me. So I'm talking about the other edition, but for the sake of holding up a book, it's this one. Anyway, this is an autobiographical account of Misty Copeland, the first African-American prima ballerina of the American Ballet Theater Group. It was just fascinating in general because I love ballet. The more I can watch it, read about it, whatever, the more I love it. And since I danced for a long time, I appreciate the effort that goes into it because I was nowhere near as good as this woman, and that took so much more effort than you would ever imagine. And so watching her, I've watched a couple clips, or reading this, it's kind of one of those things you go, oh, glad it's you, not me. But it was also fascinating in that it opens your eyes to the realization that different arts are invaded by racism and classism as well, which is something that you know subconsciously, but you don't act on it. And that was odd to realize. You may notice a theme with my most thought-provoking books: racism, classism, feminism, genderism, sexism, that's the word. All of those have become more prevalent in my reading life because I'm trying to be more diverse. I need to learn more, I need to know more, always. And I think it's good, especially in the climate that I live in today, that we live in, it's good to know and, if at all possible, be able to help in whatever way I can or whatever way others need. So this was just a really good book, and I think it was fun to read this in an autobiographical sense. Next, we have a brick of a book, which is Institutes of the Christian Religion by John Calvin, and by brick I mean a brick of a book. This book is Calvin's rendition in writing of all of his Christian beliefs. This I read on the recommendation of one of my friends, and it was very dense but well written and explained virtually everything I could have ever wanted to know about Calvinism, which is excellent since it was, written by the founder. I thought that I disagreed with most of Calvin because when you hear the word Calvinist, you kind of think extremism, but it's not at all. And I think that reading this book helped me understand more about religion and faith and what the differences are, and why there's so many different denominations, and the fact that realistically none of them are that different. For example, Orthodox, they practice Orthodox something in Russia. East Orthodoxy? Or is it just Orthodoxy? I don't remember. But either way, that versus Catholicism, it has something to do with yeast in the bread, which seems to be ridiculous to me. But then again, I am not either of those, so maybe it's something serious. But this book made me really think about that and reevaluate my own views on religion and faith. Next we have Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I know a lot about South African history in general because I've taken classes there, I've been there, I've read multiple books about South Africa, but none of them have been personal after apartheid. I did read Mandela's autobiography 2 years ago before I traveled there because I figured that was kind of a requirement. And that was fascinating and I loved it, but this happened during the transition and after, and I think it was important and fascinating as well to read about how South Africa still struggles with racism and what the differences were, or how people were treated at all during the late 80s, early 90s when South Africa was starting to fight back against apartheid and then got a new constitution in 97. It's also a short book, it's written by a comedian, and that just makes it funny and really easy to read, but also it makes you realize that cultures and peoples treat things very differently. Names were one of the big things in here that I didn't know, and I love learning about. Next is Good and Mad by Rebecca Traister. I listened to this one on audiobook when I was driving back and forth between Rochester and Grand Forks during the month of November. This book talks about women's anger, why we are mad, why we should be mad, why we've become complacent, why we don't express our anger. Everything like that. It's about a 10-hour audiobook and well worth the listen. This is also part of Emma Watson's book club. It was one of 3 picks for November and December. I still haven't read the other 2, but I'll get there. It is a nonfiction. It is narrated by the author, who pronounces GIF as GIF and cacophony as cacophony, both of which drove me a little bit nuts. However, I overlooked those for the actual content of it, which was absolutely phenomenal. It was validating and well thought out, well researched, which I really enjoyed. And the last one is more of an honorable mention, but that is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. It's sort of right on that line between being an honorable mention and being actually one of my most thought-provoking books of the year, which is why I'm mentioning it. It follows a Korean family who moves to Japan from 1910 until present-ish day. It goes through the Japanese invasion and occupation of Korea. It discusses racism as it looks like for this Korean family in Japan. It goes through classism and World War II, which includes the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, everything like that, and I think it was an amazing glimpse into an era and a group of people that I do not normally read about. It is also fiction, and that was, I think, a really good way to do it. I found it fascinating. Definitely one of the most thought-provoking, I think. We're moving it up to being actually in thought-provoking and not just an honorable mention. If you haven't read it, I think you should. The audiobook was decent. I'd probably give the audiobook 3.5 stars, so I think I might try to reread it sometime in 2019. But those are all of my most thought-provoking books of 2018. I can't believe the year is over. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did. Goodreads and Twitter are linked down below, with whatever other videos I said would be linked down below. Sophie from Portland Pages, I said. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.